Hello, ladies and gentlemen, Cone Dodger here, and welcome back to Automation, the car company tycoon game. Perhaps you are new here, perhaps this is your first time seeing Automation being played. Well, this is a game that I've been playing for many years now and have done hundreds of videos in. However, today is something new and something exciting because I will be doing my first ever Let's Play playthrough of the Lite campaign. We did one video where we took a look into the development of the Lite campaign, but today I am starting my personal series in a Lite campaign, and we're gonna do it in a similar style to how I've always done my Let's Plays in Automation, and that is story-based. So it has always been very common for me to call my series or my playthroughs in Automation Vector Automotive Challenges, and that is a series or gameplay mode that I would make up. It was all fictional, it was all in my head, and it was just based around a company that I was saying we were creating. Now we have this Lite campaign, we're gonna do Vector, and we're gonna do it inside of the Lite campaign, and we're gonna do it in line with why I call these the Vector Automotive Challenge at all. And that is because I grew up in the North Florida area, and in Green Cove Springs there was a little car company known as Vector, and they created supercars from the early 90s, most through the 90s and a little bit into the 2000s. That was a big reason that I got interested into the creation of automobiles. I saw a Vector at a car show, a local car show, and found out about this, and it became apparent to me that, this is a real thing. People actually design and make cars. People make their own car companies, and that was a very I would say important thing in my childhood. It really lit a spark under me to get interested in cars. From there, I decided to try and go to school to become a mechanical engineer so that I could design cars. Turns out I'm not very smart, so that never happened, and mechanical engineer, car designer is not something that I will ever be able to say that I am, and that is why automation is so important to me. This game is exactly that. I am going to create the car company that inspired me to want to design cars to begin with, and we're gonna try and do what they did, except maybe succeed, because Vector, in their history, would never go down as a success story. So it's going to be a challenge. We're going to be starting in the year 1980, because starting in 1990 in the Lite campaign is quite a daunting challenge. Just moving the year up to 1980, you will see that we are on brutal difficulty. So we're going to do some things to try and make it a little bit easier on us. We are in Gasmea, which is considered to be the American analog, and we are going to give ourselves, actually we're going to say that Kilrob Industries is giving us a $4 billion starting cash allowance. However, through the progression of this series, we may just hear from Mr. Kilrob as he determines if we are wasting his money or not. If you are very new to the Lite campaign and have not seen anything about it, I did do a video with Caswell, who is one of the main developers of Automation, and he walked us through a little bit of the Lite campaign. This is version 2, it's got some updates, it's a little bit different than what we saw, but hopefully we will be able to explore all of it, and you guys can see what it's all about. So over here, Company Tech. This is basically starting bonuses, and since our difficulty, even with $4 billion, is on hard, I am going to give myself a chassis allowance, because we are a supercar company, and I would say that if anything, if you're of the frame of mind where I want to start a supercar company, you probably have some kind of chassis experience in your background. Under team, now this is an optional thing, you don't have to start with a team at all, but you can. I am going to give myself me. I will be on the staff as a engine specialist in the USA, and that will give us some bonuses in The fueling category, a little bit of forced induction, a little bit of exhaust, and top end. That brings our difficulty to a 1.43 score modifier. It is still hard difficulty, so I will also be bumping up this. This is the competitor car markup, so it makes their cars a little bit more expensive, so that things are a little bit easier for us. Okay, so that is pretty much where I wanted us to be, somewhere in that basically even score multiplier. Let's actually, can we get that to be 1-0? There we go. So hard difficulty. I have played this game a whole bunch, and I do want this to be a challenge. I want us to have the threat of failure in there. This is maybe not going to be a super long-term kind of series format, so it may be something we try multiple times. It's possible we will fail within our first model. That's not an impossibility here. This is not going to be an easy challenge. So a difficulty of just plain old hard, I think, is a good fit. Alright, so here we are. We are in the Lite campaign, and you start with this rather, to be honest, it's a daunting looking screen. There's nothing here that just kind of leads you into necessarily knowing where to go. So what I'm going to look at is what kind of economy we're in. What kind of market do we have? That's the important place to start. So let's look at the economy. Okay, so we start with budget. And budget cars are on a level to increasing kind of budget. Normal, also level. Premium, a little bit of a downswing. Luxury, a little bit of a downswing. And even commercial, a little bit of a downswing. So as it looks like we are heading into a little bit of a declining market, but things are not just absolutely a disaster. The waters are still there. The waters are still warm enough for development. We can still work around this, I think. The difference is we may not start with a quote-unquote ultimate, exotic car. We're not gonna go out there and be a, Koenigsegg making the ultimate supercar. That's probably not what we're going to be able to do. We're probably going to have to make it marginally affordable. Every time you play, you're going to get a slightly different market. There is randomization in this. So if you want to start your own playthrough to match, the kind of series that I'm doing, beware that your conditions in the economy may be dramatically different than mine. This is something that is new to the Lite campaign, and that is research and development. So here we can divert some of the money that we have been given to start with before we're even making a profit to get technology unlocked quicker. So let's see. Latest tech, things that we will have just unlocked. While we have ourselves hyper-eutectic cast pistons, which isn't a disaster. We have ball bearing turbos, which is pretty cool. Premium fuels, which is nice. Three-way cats, so at least we can put catalytic converters on there. Not completely kill the economy. Corrosive resistant steel on chassis, not too thrilling there. And other than that, gas monotube was a while ago. Fully clad under trays is cool. 3-piston brakes will be nice, and alloy wheels will be nice. So let's look at things that are coming up. What in here do we think is probably real important? This one right here, single point EFI. That is something that I think I want to have ASAP. I want to get away from carburetors as soon as we possibly can. We may even start with mechanical injection. However, that's super expensive. Single point EFI, not so bad. So let's go ahead and throw some money into this. And that will cost $1,000 a month, plus the funding monthly cost of $250,000. So if it gets us there sooner, then that is extremely important to me. Another thing that is in development on top end is VVT, and that I could see also being pretty important. So I'm going to do a 1 on that as well. This is all very new to me. I don't know what throwing money at this stuff will do, so that's going to be fun to see, how that develops, and if we get this stuff sooner, maybe I would have needed to throw a lot more money at it. Who knows? Familiarity. This is something that will come into play after we start to build cars. So once you start to build cars that have a certain technology group to them, you're going to become more familiar with building cars of that kind of, technology group. So if you're constantly making, pushrod engines, then your company is going to be better at making pushrod engines. It'll be cheaper and they'll be better. Market. Let's look at the market here. I see something super interesting. That is the highest percent I've ever seen. However, there's another one that's also very, very high. But City Eco is at 1,001%. So that's growing, or that's changing, growing at a very dramatic rate. These tooltips in here are great. This is really starting to come together, this whole Lite campaign thing. So yeah, the size is 509, sure. That's the overall size of the market per month. However, look at the growth. It's really growing. However, good news for us, Super and Hyper are also growing right now. They're not huge. Look at the size on this one, 0.3. Yeah, we're going to sell the bumper off a car per month if we're selling Hyper. However, that's a 20% increase versus the previous. And Super, 156 cars a month, much more reasonable, and a 971% change. Really increasing there. Depending what the economy does, that could be really good, or, it could really tank the other direction. This is a very volatile market. So before we get too into it here, I just want to say that I am going into this mostly blind. We did that little bit of a playthrough with Caswell, and I have been keeping a general eye open for other playthroughs. Killrob has a fantastic playthrough series. If you guys are looking for a very in-depth and kind of min-max style playthrough of the Lite campaign, check out Killrob's videos. My style is not that. I have never been one to min-max anything. That is just not how I play games. I want to do it more how we've been doing the Vector Automotive Challenge, in our own little story world. So we may not always do the things that seem super obvious to you, like, well, this is not the easy way to do this, this is not the right way to do this. No, maybe not, but it's the way that fits the storyline in my head better. So just keep that in mind before we get started here. So you don't start anything until you build a car. And the first car we're going to build, I think we're going to go for a entry-level supercar. Now, if this was the real world, if this was actual Vector, what we would probably do is design a chassis and throw somebody else's engine into it. That is what they did. That's what most newcomer supercar manufacturers do. We don't really have that ability, and the game just, basically isn't coded around that kind of playstyle. So we will be making our first car and our first engine at the same time. I considered the possibility of making a coupe, making a sports car first, and then introducing supercars, but that's not the right spirit to me. I think we need to start with a supercar. We got to sell super low volume at super high markup and try and get over that initial hurdle. So if we keep the bodies into the last 10 years, which would be 1970 forward, this is the quote-unquote supercar chassis that we have to choose from. Styling-wise, it fits the bill very well. 1980, I would even say this is maybe a little bit cutting edge. It's got that very wedgy, sharp style to it. Versus if we went to 20 years, we could also use this body. But this body now starting to look dated a little bit. Not to say we couldn't, modern stylize it up. But it's possible that it's a little bit too dated of a look. Okay, I think I've made my choice, and I think I am indeed going to go with this older body, just because it had the ability to sharpen it out. I really sharpened out the back. I went for the fastback design rather than the coupe design, and flattened out the nose, got rid of the, this look right here is 70s, and this is 80s, the flat, sharp lines. That, I think, will work, and with fixtures, I believe I could make this into something that fits our style. Now, before we go and do fixtures, we're going to have to do some kind of chassis. And we have a monocoque or space frame available for this. This is an old body, so we will have a safety penalty. Hopefully we can overcome that. That's something, just another little hurdle that we're going to have to overcome. Now, space frame, will look like. Well, I guess it doesn't show you. Oh, not till you get a material, perhaps. So let's look at the difference here. Monocoque, space frame. Average stiffness. The weight of a monocoque is less than that of a space frame. Production units are very low for monocoque, extremely high for space frame. Material cost is very low for monocoque, low for space frame. Tooling cost is very high for the monocoque and very low for space frame, and the rest of them pretty much par for the course all the way down. Now, the nice thing is that the minimum factory size of a space frame factory is tiny. The minimum size for a monocoque is small. Therein lies a major difference. With this one, or this one, I believe. No, okay. There's the other half of this. With a monocoque, we can do mass production. With a space frame, we cannot. Alright, so here is the setup that I think we will go with. So, I'm going to go for a monocoque steel with a mid-transverse setup that is on the fence yet. That will depend on which kind of engine we're going for, but transverse was my first choice. Double wishbone front and rear, so we can fit good-sized tires under it. Looks like I need to increase the rear fender size. And we're going to go for a fiberglass body to save weight, especially since we went for the monocoque, not the space frame. I believe there was a weight difference there. Actually, space frame is heavier. Disregard that. Also, if we produce a car with fiberglass body, we'll get better at that, and that is a good thing for our future, I believe. Now, because we had a good chassis design to begin with, like apparently I was a chassis engineer from the start, we will have 2 quality points to use in this area. Styling-wise, this will be a tough one. I'm going to spend some time here and really look into how to 80s this up a little bit. Boy, this front end is tough because of the way that the front rolls over right here. I really want to make the pop-ups work, but they're a little bit difficult to work with. Because at this angle, they look more correct from the front, or from the side, I mean. No, from the front. But from the side, they look all angled out and weird. It's a difficult front end to work with, for sure. Alright, I think that's the happy medium. These angled ones, I mean, they can still open straight up and down. Actually, my 240s do the same thing, where the front of it is super angled, but it actually opens straight up and down. I like these little headlights on the front. That really gives it a aggressive look, but we still need some indicators up here. So let's try and do that. A badge, I am still going to stick with this badge. I've been using it for a long time now. Until somebody out there with more 3D graphic design skills than me can create one for Vector, we're going to stick with this one. If there's one thing this car is of course going to need, it's vents. A supercar, it's got to have vents all over it. Nothing says supercar like vents. Also, the cooling total as of right now is 137. That's not going to be enough, so we're going to need more vents. Alright, moving to the back here. We got enough venting for it now. Let's see, we're up to... Well, tell us. Yes, we're up to 354. We may need more, but we can tune that later. Add some more little vents and grills in there when we needed. But to the back, I don't think we're quite to the wing era yet, so we'll have to go, I think, go for a spoiler. Let's see what it would look like with our duckbill style spoiler here. Flip it around. It's actually a lip that we're going to be trying to use as a spoiler. It's always tricky to make this work. Yeah, unfortunately, this is just one of those cases where it's just going to want to clip through the car the whole time. Oh, got it. Nailed it. That was not easy to do. Alright, don't lose it now. There we go. Perfect. Oh, that looks fantastic. That's exactly what I wanted. Thank you, Lip. You worked with me today. Who cares that their body line is covered up and you can't actually open the hatch anymore? It's going to be a non-serviceable engine. When looking at this body and looking at the era, I couldn't think of a taillight that fits any better than these, especially with the body color lines through it. That is pretty much perfect. Alright, still a little blank through here. Could we get a grill in there? Maybe give us even a little bit more cooling potential and spice it up. I am not sure. I'm going to look through some of this stuff, though. That's a pretty cool look. That worked out pretty well. I like that. And now we have 469 kilojoules per second of cooling. What a stat that is. All right, nice. Just need a badge back here to finish it up. Pretty busy back there, but I think it works. I think the only real detail we need is some door handles. Let's see about that. Let's make them very simple and likely cheap. There we go, that'll work. Nice. All right, especially with some good wheels on there, this is gonna look pretty good. Let me go back to this. Oops. And widen these rear fenders out just a touch. Now what do we have? 235, 235. All right, that should be a good starting point. I think that's not too bad looking. I was a little worried about this body not looking 80s enough, but I think we've found a pretty good happy medium there. Usually the first thing I do is get rid of the red, but for this car it works really well, doesn't it? It's one of the default colors, so we can go back to it. Oh, it looks pretty good in blue too. Actually, you know what? It looks pretty good in all the colors. Well, that's encouraging. That's a good thing. It even looks good in the like charcoal black. Nice. All right. Well, we'll stick with the red for now because concept car. It's gotta grab the eyes. And with that, we jump right into the hot stuff. The engine. What do we do? What options do we have here? Let's see. V engines. We have a 6, 8, or 12. Flat plane. We could do an 8. Inline 3, 4, and 6. I don't think we could fit an inline 6 sideways in there. Just a guess. Just a guess. You could probably barely squeak an inline 4 in there. Fit a really nicely sized inline 3. V6 fits. V8 starting to get too large. V12, you would have to be like really, really tiny. That's ridiculous looking. Alright. But V8 you could fit up to, in theory, probably about a 3.5 liter, I would say. Oh no, you can go pretty large if you stroke the heck out of it. About a 4 liter would be realistically fitting. The thing that's nice about a V8 is that it has high prestige versus a V6 only has average prestige. Inline 4 would be low prestige, I believe. The flat plane V8 doesn't have any higher prestige, which I think is surprising. Personally, I would say it would in my mind, but I could see in a buyer's eye flat plane V8 not really meaning too much to them. I don't think that term ever really meant anything to anybody until, if we hop to current times, the GT350. That term has now, suddenly people realize that that's a cool thing, but previous to that, not really. At least in the American market. So let's go cross-plane V8, and let's say this 4 liter area is probably good because it's fitting as of now, and I am not going to go for push rods. We have top-end specialty, so let's go for dual overhead cam. Let's go for an aluminum block as well, aluminum heads. This will not be a cheap setup. So you can do 2 or 4 valves in this dual overhead cam setup versus with a single overhead cam you could do 3 valves. Gives you a nice middle ground, doesn't it? Okay, so we're now in an era. Let's not forget, this is 1980. Emissions are important and economy is important, even in this top-of-the-line kind of car. So lower emissions with the 3-valve overhead cam setup versus this, but then if we go to 4-valve, it's low as well. Let's go all out. Let's not hold back here. Let's do dual overhead cam on a V8 aluminum engine. This is going to be a lot to try and tackle for sure for our first engine. And I think because of that, let's actually keep the internals pretty simple. Just a cast crank, cast con rods, and high protected cast pistons. So we're not going to rev this thing to the moon, but we'll have the ability, I think, in the future to maybe get to there. As I usually do, we're going to lay some basic variables into here. And the most important thing is the valve covers. So we went for a red car. Red and white is always a good combination, so that will work. I like the way I like that whole valve cover. That's just phenomenally 80s, really. For now, let's stay naturally aspirated. I don't think this car will need turbos with the size of engine that we're using. In the injection side, all we have available to us is mechanical injection, which is unfortunate because that is so expensive and probably not worth it that I just don't think it's going to be a viable option to us. Luckily, we are putting a lot of money into the whole electronic fuel injection thing, so hopefully that will move along nicely. On a 4-barrel setup, we would make a maximum horsepower of 251. 251 on twin 2-barrels. Well, that just makes too much sense, doesn't it? But we can go triples and get 377. And who doesn't like triple carbs, really? As mentioned, we do have premium fuel available to us, so we will do that. We have dual exhaust, at least out the back. We don't need 1,000 horsepower worth. 438 should be more than enough. We'll get those 3-way cats we talked about. And the straight-through muffler, and that's it. We may need more. You know, you start to get into the refinement part of it, too. So let's see what our initial build is complaining about, because it will be complaining about something. I like that. I think that's a change, where you don't get your variables until you run the engine. That's a good change. Sounds good. 291 horsepower. Could be better, but that's not bad at all. I think we may be revving a little too high. Let's see. Pistons say bottom end, RPM limit, RPM limit, RPM limit, RPM limit. That's okay, because we're really not making much power up there anyway. So I bet if we reduce this down to maybe 6,700, yeah, everything's much happier. The crank is having some RPM limit issues, but not much. However, 87.6 on fuel octane. We have 90.3 to use. Let's use it. Let's throw some compression at this bad boy. All right, just getting the compression up to a reasonable area puts us to 300 horsepower. It's a pretty high-strung motor. It makes most of its power past that 3,000 mark, and the torque, not a very flat torque curve until you get past 3,000 there. What I was really worried about was making it exotic enough without being so exotic that we couldn't get it to be, you know, reasonably produced or cooled or reliable, stuff like that. And I think we've found a pretty decent balance so far. I'm going to do some more tuning now. As an aside, one detail I'd really love to see added to the game would be the ability to choose between timing belts and timing chains, because I feel like that's a pretty important decision in your engine design. However, for this engine, for this dual overhead cam engine of 1980, a big long belt in there. So reliability may be an issue with that. However, 303 horsepower, 266 foot-pounds of torque out of a 4-liter dual overhead cam V8 is not so shabby. The economy is not so great, 11.65%. Probably not going to be getting 30 miles per gallon out of this car. Alright, so we got ourselves a nice sounding V8 that's a little bit European, it's a little bit American, and I think that's a good fit. It really ties into that whole Vector theme. Let's go ahead and work on the chassis and drivetrain and all that good stuff. I think we'll opt for a 4-speed manual. It has just average engineering time, so we don't have to spend forever designing this car or engineering it, stuff like that. So that, I believe, is important and should be good enough for us. We went through all the trouble of making sure we could fit 235s front and rear on this car. Let's use that initially, but we may need to stagger this thing to make it not become a oversteer death trap. We will see. 15s are about standard for the era. Looks-wise, that's not bad. Neither are those. Are there any of the factory ones? Not loving those. I think this is probably the good fit. A semi-clad setup doesn't take too much engineering time or money and seems worthwhile. Cooling airflow down to just a little bit above what we need. Not too overly worried about reliability on this one. Not as of now, anyway. 2 seats are 3. No, I don't think we're gonna stick somebody in the middle, especially since it's a 4-speed. that would be pretty terrible of us. In the interior, do we go for handmade? Do we go for sport? Sport engineering time is average versus handmade is very high engineering time. We'll see what sport will get us, and we will have some premium options such as power steering, a premium 8-track, and let's go for advanced 80s safety because, well, we have that chassis penalty to deal with. First indications of the suspension is rough. Some weird things going on with the charts right now, but all we need to see is steering low speed, a little bit oversteery. You know, just a touch. Just a touch. Even with a 205, 235 stagger, it is still an oversteering mess. I'm working on it though. Despite all of my best efforts, I am still fighting massive oversteer. Got it okay on the aero front, or at least getting close to it. I think just some more tuning and we'll get there, yeah. But gotta take care of this oversteer, and we may need to put wider rear tires on it to do it. So we're going back to the chassis. Alright, the good news is getting the back up to a 255 solves the oversteer issue, and we got up to a 215 in the front. The bad news is we only got up to a 215 in the front. We would like a little bit more than that, but it's what we're gonna have to deal with, I think, for now, until we get a little bit better of a tire under the thing. And let's actually increase that tire quality a little bit. We'll spend some money on that, just so that it's not a complete murder wagon. You know, one thing that really surprises me here is the wheel spin. All that weight in the back and a, 255 tire back there, 2.8%. Not too shabby. Alright, initial findings are drivability 37, sportiness 41, comfort 28, prestige 40. That's the number we like to see. Safety stays at a 39 too, despite the chassis. Total cost is really not too bad, $86.93. Could have been a lot pricier than that. 2,400 pound car, getting 12.5 miles per gallon, which is actually moderately acceptable, just for this era at least. Alright, so let's look at some of the base test track stuff, make sure it's handling okay. And it turns about a G on the small and the big, so that's okay. 13.5 quarter mile, that's okay. Top speed 163. Honestly, I think I would prefer it to be a little higher than that. But a 163, it's not an embarrassing number. But we may need to get some more out of it. That's possible. We'll see how the markets say it's doing. Alright, so here's our initial estimates. We're doing good Sport, Track Premium, and Fun Premium. We're doing okay in Super. That's where we want to be. Super is the one I had earmarked. So how many supercars do we actually have? 13 competitors, quite a few. More than I expected, to be honest. And in Sport 8, Fun Premium 21. So these are pretty competitive fields, and we aren't doing too shabby in those competitive fields. So that's something. On estimate, this is all just estimated here. I have a feeling once we throw in the fact that we need to be making a lot of money off of these, that will narrow down quite significantly and flip sides to Super. And so it does. Super, Track Premium, and Lite Sport Premium. Those are the three that are in the range now, and Hyper as well. One thing to consider there, this is considered a luxury class, and this body is too old to be desirable, so its desirability is reduced by 6%. That is a slight problem. Alright, there we go. For today, I think that will do it. We have designed a car. Now we need to design ourselves a factory and a setup to produce it. So next time we'll see if this is a successful venture or not, and make a lot of decisions about the future of our company right here. So that will be fun and somewhat stressful times. Alright, well, thank you all for watching. I hope you're excited for the future of the Vector Lite campaign. Hope you enjoy the concept and think it's interesting, and tune in for more.